What's going on, everyone? So there's a lot of talks about De'Aaron Fox and what are the Spurs going to do with De'Aaron, right? He is extension eligible. He can't officially sign that extension until August 3rd, but we're like a week away from that, or a couple days beyond that. But point is that there's a lot of talks about like, hey, they might trade him after landing Dylan Harper. Kind of makes De'Aaron Fox expendable. Keep getting these reports that like, hey, keep an eye out on De'Aaron Fox potentially being a trade candidate, particularly not necessarily this season, but as we kind of progress, which I do think is likely. I do think it's very likely that De'Aaron Fox at some point ends up getting traded if Dylan Harper really comes on the scene. I don't think it's this season, right? But there's also a lot of talks about the extension itself, right? Like, are the Spurs going to give him the full max with the full years? There are reports that the Spurs aren't really interested in that the Spurs either are willing to give him the money, but on a shorter term deal, or give him, the money, but on a longer term deal, like shorter money, but on a longer term deal. So we'll see also what De'Aaron Fox is willing to do, right? Depending on how this extension goes, could end up forcing the Spurs' hand, right? If De'Aaron Fox goes like, hey, if you're not going to give me the full max and the full money, then I want out. I want to be traded. Then boom, that forces your hand. You're not going to just lose him for nothing. You might as well get something of value for him. So keep an eye on it for sure. I definitely think it's something that we need to monitor. But I think more likely than not, the Spurs will give De'Aaron Fox that max extension. And it's one of those things where you figure it out later. Right? Dylan Harper's still probably a good year or two away from really being able to take over the reins at a high level. Maybe not. Maybe this year he comes out, absolute gamebusters, kicks the door in, and is already established as like, a top guy. Very well could be. Who knows? I don't want to put parameters on a young man, but realistically speaking, it's probably going to take a year or two to kind of really get his feel for the game, at least at the level in which the Spurs are going to want. And then you kind of look to, okay, maybe we move off of De'Aaron Fox at this point, right? And you go and trade. Now, I do have concerns, though. If you give him the full max and you give him the full years, that you might not be able to trade him. Now, you might be thinking, of course you will. He's an all-star point guard. New CBA has changed a lot. Guys aren't rushing to the door to go give guys max contracts, 50 plus million a year. And you got to keep in mind, a lot of teams already have that star point guard. Two, right? Like, how many teams, you need to find a team that looks at De'Aaron Fox as like the answer for what they need. Because teams aren't going to pony up a ton just to get off that. And if you're the Spurs, you don't want to take on bad contracts. Or you don't want to you might find teams that are willing to trade for him. There might be a plethora of teams. But you also need to find the right trade. Right? So there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's not as simple as like, hey, you give us these guys, we'll give you De'Aaron Fox, right? Like, teams are going to only want to give up what they're going to want to give up, right? They're not going to want to, give a bunch, hey, here's $50 million in expiring contracts for De'Aaron Fox. No. And the Spurs are going to want something of value. So it's going to be trickier than they might think. So it might be easiest to trade De'Aaron Fox right now. However, I do think there is also the potential, if you do this right and line this up correctly, Spurs are going to get expensive, and they're getting expensive fast. I mean, again, De'Aaron Fox, Jeremy Sohan are due contracts this year. Then after that, you're going to have to start making decisions on not Victor Wembanyama. Wemby, they're just going to give the money to. But, then you have guys like Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, right? You're going to have even small role player guys, Julian Champagnie, so on and so forth. These guys are going to start making payment, right? You're going to have to start paying these guys. So this team is going to get expensive very, very quickly. This offseason, De'Aaron Fox is probably getting an extension. And then what are you going to do with Jeremy Sohan? Are you going to sign him to a new contract next year? What does he want? He's probably going to want 20 plus million. Right? I don't think the Spurs should nor could give that to them. Right? So you could end up running the risk of him. Do you maybe look to trade him? Right? There's a lot of things that the Spurs are going to have to kind of navigate and figure out in the next year, De'Aaron Fox included. Right? But I do think that there is this potential where you might be able to kind of time it right? If De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper isn't going to get his big bag until the 2029 season. So if you give De'Aaron Fox a contract, let's say you give him if he's willing to do a max on 3 years, right? Or maybe do a fourth year with a team option or something like that, but he's probably not going to want that. Maybe you get the player option, and maybe you can convince him to opt out of it, or maybe you can trade him at that point because he's an expiring contract. I don't know, right? But point is that if the Spurs can line this up correctly, then we could see kind of him fall off and Harper come in, right? And you also got to keep in mind, as De'Aaron Fox starts to decline, as he starts getting into his later years, later into that contract, right? What does that look like for you? And now Wemby's moving into his, his peak, right? There's again, a lot that they're going to have to kind of navigate and figure out here. But there is this potential where you kind of line things up to where now Harper kind of takes De'Aaron Fox's place as far as contracts go. But in that process, again, you're going to have Victor Wembanyama getting a bag. You're going to have Stephon Castle getting a bag. You're going to have guys like Jeremy Sohan and all these guys. And that's not to mention Keldon Johnson and his money, Devin Vassell and his money. That's why I'm pretty confident they're going to trade them at some point too. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if in a year or two, not saying they will, I don't know, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if De'Aaron Fox, Devin Vassell, and Keldon Johnson are all on other teams in the next year or two, right? Again, I don't know. The Spurs are going to be patient. They're going to wait for that right trade. They're going to wait for that opportunistic trade. They're not going to jump the gun on anything. They're not going to go and, force a move just to force a move or anything like that. But if that right trade comes along, I expect them to jump on that immediately, right? If there's a trade that comes along where it's like, man, we could turn Vassell and Keldon into this guy, I think they'll do that. Or even like the right consolidation trade. Right? I could see them kind of like, hey, let's package these guys, dump them into this. Maybe it's a multi-team deal. Maybe a team's like, hey, we'll take Keldon Johnson. Right? Like, whatever you have to do. Because, again, guys are going to have to start getting paid. The Spurs are going to get expensive very quickly. You're going to need to kind of figure guys out. That's not counting what does Carter Bryant become. Right? What if Carter Bryant really does become that guy and now he's starting to get a bag? I mean, there's the potential. You could have 4 or 5 max contracts on this team if everyone pans out the way that you want them to, right? If Victor's getting a max for sure. Dylan Harper, if he becomes what he's going to become, he's getting a max for sure. Stephon Castle might end up getting that max. Carter Bryant, if he becomes what you want him to become, he could end up becoming a max, right? Like, you start, again, this team might end up being like, they might be stuck. Like it might be 6, 7 guys and then like a bunch of like vet minimum guys for the next, 10 years, 4 years from now, right? So we'll see how this all kind of plays out. I trust the Spurs to make the right decisions. I trust the Spurs to figure it out. But to me, with the De'Aaron Fox extension, I do think he gets the max. Just curious about the years, right? And again, if the Spurs kind of time it right, they might be able to kind of, navigate that. Where it's like, okay, now Fox is falling off, Dylan Harper's getting paid, Carter Bryant's getting paid, and he kind of figures some stuff out. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. Again, it also boils down to De'Aaron Fox, right? What does De'Aaron Fox want? What is he looking for? Is he looking to be traded, right? Like, so, I mean, again, De'Aaron Fox could be the reason that they end up trading him, right? I wouldn't be shocked if they trade him this season. However, I think they'll try to get through this season, kind of figure it out, and then kind of take it from there. But again, De'Aaron Fox could be the one that kind of forces that play, forces their hand and goes like, hey, if you're not going to pay me, you're not going to give me the years or the contract or, the full money, then time for me to go somewhere where they will. Right. So anyway, as always, this is a discussion, pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Also not, if you enjoy these types of videos, truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.